the car up onto 2 blocks on the front wheels just to get it slightly higher, and the next job is to release the wheel nuts. Getting the puck and putting it under the front unit. What I have is a bit of a homemade device for jacking up the car. I'll show you what it is now. Right, the next step is to put the car into jack mode. Okay, now it's at the right height, the wheel can spin. I can just lower it onto the blocks. And that's the car jacked up. So have a close look at what I'm going to be doing today is placing the upper control arm. See how corroded it is, and these are the ball joints that tend to fail. The real challenge for this is removing this pinch bolt, which I've had to go at before but failed to do it. So I've got a new press tool now to help remove that. This car's got air suspension, so I also need to remove the ride height sensor. I'm also going to replace the front lower control arm. I did the rear one last year. With the cover removed, you can now see how corroded this upper control arm is. I need to remove that nut, one that's there, which is behind the wheel shield, and the pinch bolt I showed earlier just there. First thing to do is remove the ride height sensor. There's a 10mm nut at the back and a 9mm lock washer on the other side of the bracket. The ride height sensor is now removed. I put the nut back on the end so I didn't lose it. I've also removed the connection for that, I believe it's the speed sensor. The issue is that this knuckle, once you remove this bolt, is going to fall forward, so I need to put a bungee cord around it, and I'm going to do it around the structure here. So I'm going to remove the wheel liner. You also need to remove it anyway to get to the bolt on the other side here. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. Now that the wheel line is removed, you get good access and visibility of what needs removing. So I'm starting with the upper control arm. I'm going to put a bungee cord around the structure here to hold the knuckle when this gets undone. There's a nut behind there, one access from the top there. So that's what I'm going to do next, is remove these. The issue I had last time I tried this is this pinch bolt here. Although the nut can come undone, the bolt will not release, it's completely seized in there. So I've had it a few days soaking with WD-40, and hopefully with the press tool I'll be able to remove that this time. So that's the nut now released enough to be able to press on it to get the bolt out that way. So the press tool is now installed, pressing against the nut which I've left on the end, and the hole on this end is big enough to clear the other side of the bolt. So theoretically, put pressure on here, down there, it will push that bolt through. Let's see how it goes. So I had to use one of the press adapters to get a decent connection from the shaft onto the nut. I've used another spare nut to make a little bit of a extra clearance because it's all a bit tight in there. But using a socket wrench on the end, tighten this up, just very, very slowly pushing that bolt back through here. So the press tool has pushed the bolt all the way through there, but it still won't come out, it's still solid. So I'm now going to use the press tool with a little socket just to push it through that little bit further. There we go, it's out. Right, the issue I've got is that's not a nut on here in this side, it's actually a bolt that goes all the way through. The bolt's got to come back through that way, and the air suspension is actually in the way. So the next task is actually to take this, at least undo it and drop it, so it gives clearance to get that bolt out at the top, which is going to be a bit annoying. Okay, so I've removed the bottom bolt from the air strut, and 3 top bolts. I ended up bleeding just for safety reasons, so I removed that so there's no air in it, and that has dropped the air strut sufficiently for that bolt that comes through there to come through. The third bolt is around the back here. Hopefully I can show it. Is that one there, which is a 15mm. I believe it has a captive nut on the inside, so it should be straightforward to take off. So I managed to get that bolt quite easily out from there. Just came out there, and it's now freed up hold of this. So the next task is just to yank that out. Right, so the issue is it has to go up to come out. Nearly there. There we go. Right, and there we have it. One manky upper bolt. The new one is very stiff. It's as loose as anything. No obvious signs of breaking in the rubber seal there. Right, this is the new upper control arm. See how you can't even move that compared to the old one, which was completely loose. So it clearly needs doing. Yeah, and also see how corroded it is. So I'm also going to apply Corrosion X to the metal surface of this, hopefully keep it in a better state. It's all cleaned up, so the new one's going in. I shall try and get this one in first, up in behind the shock absorber. So that's the first bolt loosely in. I shall put a little bit of copper ease on the end to stop that corroding a bit more. So the next thing to do is tighten up those back two bolts at the position of rest that you'd expect this upper control arm to be in. I don't have the tool to do this, you can't buy it from what I can tell. So what I did before I took the car apart, I marked up with tape the normal resting position of the upper control arm. So I'm going to use that line to torque up effectively these upper bolts and hopefully get it in the right position. So this is the line I drew before I took the car apart. And therefore I'll want to torque up these back bolts, or at least tighten them up for now, when it's in that resting position. So this is now loosely tightened at the nuts on both sides at the angle for rest. So I'll now put in the knuckle into the front ball joint. So connecting those two together and putting in a new bolt and nut. Here's the new bolt, and I put lots of copper grease on it to hopefully stop it seizing up again. That's about as good as it's going to get. And quite nicely. So with a combination of a ratchet strap and a jack underneath there holding the knuckle in place, and the ratchet strap pulling the top thing down, you manage to slide back in. So final job is to put a bolt in. I now need to reattach the strut to there and the bolts at the top, reconnect the airline, and then I can torque everything up. I've loosely put on the top bolts and the bottom bolt there, so all the fasteners are back in. So the next task, I'm going to jack up the wheel hub until it's at the ride height, at the normal ride height, which I've measured beforehand. Okay. I'm going to start by torquing up the strut. These top nuts need to be down to 39 Newton meters and the large bottom bolt at 140 Newton meters. Okay, I now need to torque up these rear bolts to 68 Newton meters and the front ball joint to 60 Newton meters. T50 bit just to hold it. I just got a different T50 bit. It seems to be a slightly better, closer fit. That's all the bolts torqued up. I've got to reattach the sensor there with the nut. The official torque spec 7 Newton meters, but I can't get a torque wrench on that, so I'll just do it as well as I can. Then it's wheel liner back in, wheel on, and do the other side. This is the replacement lower control arm. As you can see, the old one's come out now, and that's quite loose. The one on the other side was even looser than that. The new one is rigid, can't move it, so it clearly did need to be replaced. The upper control arm is now installed on both sides of the car, and also I've replaced that front lower control arm. To that. It will now need an alignment, but I got as close as I could from where it was before. The third item I wanted to replace was that control link. However, to get to the top bolt, it's inside the knuckle, and you'd have to remove the disc and the shield to get access to that. So I'm going to leave that one for another day, i.e. once I've have a need to replace the discs.